Good evening to you. 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 Welcome to Daring Dialogues. I'm your host tonight, Shantae Charles. I hope that you are having a great and wonderful day. As always, it is a pleasure to be here, to be sharing in the knowledge, in the education, in the understanding, in the undertaking called history, and most importantly, Black history. So tonight we are going to start off with What Color is My World? The Lost History of African American Inventions. Again, this is a book by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Raymond Opsfeld, illustrated by Ben Booz and A.G. Ford. Tonight's inventor is Dr. Valerie L Thomas, born 1943, and she created the illusion transmitter. Now, here's a picture of Dr. Valerie L Thomas. Those of you who are listening by podcast can catch the video stream of this same broadcast on Daring Dialogues, Season 10, Episode 60 on our IG. Fast facts about Dr. Valerie L Thomas. She was the first She had the first 3D movie shown to paying customers, and this was in 1915. The audience wore red and green glasses that combined the two movie images, which had been shot 2.5 inches apart. Back in the 1950s, most of the 3D movies were horror films, so they could show knives and stuff poking out at the audience. If there's one thing we've learned from listening to these stories about all these amazing inventors, is that most of them had a really hard time being taken seriously as scientists just because they were black. Now, imagine how much harder it was if you were black and a woman. First, you'd have to overcome the whole racial thing. Blacks aren't smart enough to compete with whites, blah, blah, blah. Then you'd also have to put up with a whole bunch of stuff about being a girl, such as people saying things like girls just aren't as smart as men, yada yada yada. That's what makes Dr. Valerie L. Thomas so cool. She worked her way up to Associate Chief of the Space Science Data Operations Office at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration in NASA, retiring in 1995. In 1980, she received a patent for an illusion transmitter, which creates three-dimensional projections. Many believe this is the future of television and video games. Thanks to a black woman, Dr. Thomas, one day, geeks everywhere will be romping through their World of Warcraft realms as if their orcs were right in front of them. For the rest of us, doctors are also using her invention to create 3D images of the body to better diagnose patients. Dr. Valerie L. Thomas, illusion transmitter, inventor of the 3D image. All right. I am moving on tonight. I'm moving on to our next book. And good evening to those of you who are with us live. The Fierce 44 Black Americans Who Shook Up the World. Tonight we're going to be looking at 3 Black Americans from this particular book. And the first one we're going to hit tonight is the one that we did not talk about last night, and that is Muhammad Ali. Why? because he was the greatest, just like he said he was. Muhammad Ali, boxer and activist, 1942 to 2016. Muhammad Ali, who loudly proclaimed himself both pretty and the greatest boxer of all time, set the standard for social activism by athletes. He was named Cassius Clay when he was born in Louisville, Kentucky, and he started boxing at the age of 12 after someone stole his bike. At 18, Clay had won an Olympic gold medal. A short 4 years later, he beat the heavily favored Sonny Liston to become the world heavyweight champion. The next day, Clay showed the world that he was more than a great boxer, announcing that he was joining the Nation of Islam and getting rid of his slave name. He would now be known as Muhammad Ali. At the time, black athletes were expected to be credits to the race by being modest and dignified and staying quiet about issues affecting the country. Ali rejected all of that. He was nicknamed the Louisville Lip, mocking opponents and often forecasting his victory in rhyme. He became a Muslim in a predominantly Christian country, we know, the United States of America, and at a time when fighting for civil rights meant pushing for integration. Ali joined a religious group that preached racial separation. He questioned America's participation in the Vietnam War and refused to be drafted into the Army. He was stripped of his boxing titles and put on trial for evading the draft. Ali eventually won his case after appealing it all the way to the Supreme Court. But for more than 3 years, no one would pay him to fight. After his trial, Ali went on to win the world heavyweight title for an unprecedented third time in a bout against undefeated heavyweight champion George Foreman in the Rumble in the Jungle in Kinshasa, Zaire, Africa. Ali, at age 32, was the underdog, but with an 8-round knockout, he reclaimed the title that had been taken from him years earlier because of his opposition to the war. A lifelong social activist and philanthropist, Ali received many honors for his humanitarian work, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, Muhammad Ali. Our next, James Baldwin. James Baldwin is probably one of my most favorite writers, novelists, playwrights, activists, orators, you name it. Mr. Baldwin is right up there. Why are we looking at him? Because he embraced the responsibility to be a voice of his nation. And here is the wonderfully illustrated image of James Baldwin. Well done. James Baldwin knew that it was his job to reveal the truth. Born 1924 and lived till 1987. The truth about his race, the truth about his country, the ugly truths of racism, poverty, and inequality that plague the United States even now. He confronted American racism with fearless honesty, and he did it with style. His brilliant prose combined his own experience with the best and worst of Black life around him. The joys, the blues, the sermons, the spirituals, and even the sting of discrimination. Baldwin grew up in Harlem, where his writing talent was recognized at an early age. He moved to Europe when he was 24 after becoming discouraged by the racism in the United States. His first novel, Go Tell It on the Mountain, illuminated the struggle of poor inner city residents. His collection of essays called The Fire Next Time explosively represented Black identity just as the country was coming to terms with how much white supremacy helped shape our history. In his second novel, Giovanni's Room, Baldwin wrote about gender and sexuality without ever mentioning race. As an impoverished man, Baldwin was asked if he felt he had bad luck. In fact, he said he believed he hit the jackpot. His identity helped to create his work, and his writing represented every individual whose access to American civil liberties was hampered by race or gender or sexuality or poverty. Baldwin unapologetically asked the nation to see its true self through the beauty of its most marginalized people. And now, Jean-Michel Basquiat. He was an artist that was born in 1960 and lived to 1988. Why? Because legendary dopeness never goes out of style. So this is Jean-Michel Basquiat, world famous artist. And I have a piece of mine that I'm going to show you all in just a moment that I did in the style or reminiscent of, as they would say, Basquiat. This is a piece that is for sale, but I'm just showing it to you tonight. If you have some inquiries about the piece, you can message me. 8 short years. That's how long it took Jean-Michel Basquiat to secure his legacy as a great artist. He died at the age of 27, unfortunately, from a drug overdose, leaving behind over 1,000 unseen paintings, drawings, and notebooks, many of which explored American punk and hip hop, the urban plight of African Americans, jazz, and the nature of fame during the 1980s. Born to a Haitian father and Puerto Rican mother, Basquiat dropped out of high school and started doing graffiti art on New York City's Lower East Side. He was handsome, fashionable, and famously eccentric. The drawing in Basquiat's best-known pieces may look primitive, but the images are actually complex and sophisticated. While his worldview was undeniably black, urban, and hypermasculine, his bold technique featuring splashes of paint was influenced by modern abstract masters like Jackson Pollock and Cy Twombly. But there is also a connection to early 20th century African American greats such as Romare Bearden and Jacob Lawrence. As influential as Basquiat is, most of his work is privately owned, and few museums have any of his best known pieces. His paintings attract stratospheric prices when they are put up for auction. In 2017, Basquiat's 1982 Untitled painting sold for $110.5 million, a record high for any American painter, making him the most successful African American painter in history. Celebrities collect his work, and an entire generation of hip hop artists, Kanye West, Jay-Z, Lil Wayne, Killer Mike, Rick Ross, and J. Cole, have name checked Basquiat. In other words, legendary dopeness and enigmatic brilliance never go out of style. So here is my piece that I created last summer, and this is my reflection on the Black Lives Matter movement and on the national and international protest that was happening. So I'm going to scroll it across the screen. All right. So that's my interpretation of the protests. I haven't named it yet. I'm still deciding. All right. Our last reading for tonight is coming from the book A Black Woman Did That. A Black Woman Did That. 43 boundary breaking, bar raising, world changing women. Tonight we learn about Misty Copeland. Now, Misty Copeland also has a couple of books out herself. I think one on the history of Black ballerinas that is available wherever books are sold. And here is the graphic design image of Misty Copeland. Misty Copeland was 7 years old when she found her first inspiration in movement. She was watching a Lifetime movie about gymnast Nadia Comaneci, who competed at the 1976 Olympic Games. Nadia made history for being the first in her sport to earn a score of a perfect 10. Misty was captivated by the grace and power demonstrated by a girl who was small like she was. She was especially impressed by her performance on the floor exercises, which appealed to her more than the tumbling and acrobatics of the other events. Misty taught herself gymnastics, spending hours after school creating rhythmic routines. On the weekends, her backyard became her studio. Whenever I danced, whenever I created, my mind was clear, she wrote in her memoir, Life in Motion, An Unlikely Ballerina. I didn't think about how I slept on the floor because I didn't have a bed, when my mother's new boyfriend might become my next stepfather, or if we would be able to dig up enough quarters to buy food, she went on to explain. Missy went through some trying times as a child. She was only 2 years old when her mother left her father and piled Misty and her siblings onto a Greyhound bus. They left Kansas City, Missouri to move to the suburbs of Los Angeles. Misty's mother remarried, but while Misty's new stepfather was kind and a good provider, his alcoholism led to the end of their marriage. After the family left him, Misty wrote that she would ride the bus and daydream about all the things a little girl should have that I didn't. Her mom worked odd jobs trying to scrape together enough food to feed Misty and her 6 siblings. The family wound up living in a small motel room. In middle school, she decided to try out for the drill team and was chosen as the captain. Being part of a group allowed her to make some friends and have more fun. It also gave her the opportunity to perform in front of audiences. The drill team coach, who had studied ballet as a kid, noticed how talented Misty was and thought Misty should give classical dance a try. She suggested to Misty that she go to the San Pedro's Boys and Girls Club and take the ballet class in their after school program. Misty had never considered ballet before, but she respected her coach and didn't want to let her down. She checked it out. For more than 2 weeks, she watched the class in the gym, fearful that if she joined, she'd make a fool of herself. The teacher had to coax her off the bleachers to join the class full of girls wearing leotards, tights, and slippers. Finally, she took her place at the bar. On her first day of ballet class, Misty wore a t-shirt, long gym shorts, and some old gym socks. She felt out of place. Everything about this kind of dancing, from the style of dress to the way the dancers move, was new. Most ballerinas start to dance when they are sipping juice boxes in preschool. I was 13 years old. Self-doubt taunted me, Misty recalled in her memoir. But she'd met a ballet teacher who would not let her give up. When fear crept in, she focused on looking, listening, and learning the techniques she was being taught. She began to see more dance, and she discovered new role models, including Debbie Allen and Paloma Herrera. When she was 15 years old, Misty, who by then was recognized as a prodigy, was offered scholarships by 5 prestigious companies to attend their summer intensive programs. She chose to study with the San Francisco Ballet, both because it gave her the largest scholarship and because it was the closest to home. The next year, she chose to spend her summer with the American Ballet Theater, or the ABT, where Paloma Herrera danced. Then, at 17 years old, Misty moved to New York City to participate in another summer intensive at American Ballet Theater, and then she joined their junior company. A big city like New York can overwhelm anyone, and Misty was no different. But she was also energized by the city. It took a little while, but eventually she found a circle of support. Her mentors included actress Victoria Rowell and writer and board member of the ABT, Susan Fales Hills, and veteran ballerina Raven Wilkinson. They had her back when she joined the main company of ABT. As a member of the company where her fellow dancers were both her friends and her competition, it was easy to feel lonely. But these women became sounding boards and pillars I could lean on when it felt like too much. Misty wrote. She frequently talks about the importance of mentors in her life, but it was her discipline and artistry that resulted in her swift progress. By the time she was 19, she became a dancer in the Corps de Ballet of her dream company. 6 years later, her performance of a Pas de Deux from The Sleeping Beauty led to her promotion as a soloist in the American Ballet Theater. She was the first Black soloist in the company in 20 years. In 2012, Misty did something no Black dancer had done before at ABT or at any other major ballet company. She played the iconic title role in The Firebird. Sadly, Shortly after her debut, she was forced to take 5 months off due to an injury. All of her hard work had taken a toll on her body. Since then, she has performed in many beloved ballets: Don Quixote, Cinderella, La Bayadere, and Swan Lake, and more. In June 2015, this unlikely ballerina made headlines in history again. She was promoted, becoming the first black principal ballerina at the American Ballet Theater. At the time, Misty admitted to having doubts. She said, "I didn't know that there would be a future for an African American woman to make it to this level. At that same time, it made me hungry to push through, to carry the next generation." With every performance, appearance, and advertisement that goes viral, she does just that. Some of the things that Misty Copeland had to say: in life, like in ballet, you have to find your balance. I am a black woman, and my identity is not a card to play or a label that I begrudgingly accept because it's been assigned to me. It's the African American culture that has raised me, that has shaped my body and my worldview. Standing out. A professional dancer's life can be lonely because of the long hours spent rehearsing and training. Missy Copeland's loneliness was magnified because she looked different. She was curvy in a way that is common to black girls, but rarely accepted in the professional ballet world. When she was in the Corps de Ballet, Arthur Mitchell invited her to join his dance theater of Harlem. She was tempted to say yes. It would give her an opportunity to perform on world stages and place her in a company where she could stand out for her talent alone. Despite the downsides of choosing to be the rare black swan in a lake of white dancers, she still became a star. And ladies and gentlemen, that is my readings for tonight. If you want to comment on any of these Black history, some of them no longer with us, but some of them also living icons, feel free to click the camera down at the bottom and give me your feedback and give me your insight on what you have learned tonight from those icons. The floor, as we say, is now open. So again, if you'd like to share, feel free to click on the camera and I will bring you in. Hello, hello, hello.
Okay. But anyway, I would like to say to Misty Copeland, you go, girl. You go, girl. You did the thing, man. You did it. Ended up at the top.
What is so interesting? What is so interesting about her story is her story mirrors my younger brother's story in a lot of ways. My younger brother, we came from the hood. And my younger brother didn't start dancing until middle school. And he was drawing first because he's also a visual artist and designer. He was drawing first, and then he took an interest in dance from what he said. He took an interest in dance after seeing some Alvin Ailey dancers. So he signed up for a ballet class. And in the ballet class, at first, all they were using him to do was to lift the girls because he was so tall. And so from there, his teacher started noticing that, hey, he can actually, he actually has some rhythm. And so his teacher started giving him more opportunity to dance. And I remember, because I was in college at the time, I would come home and we would be in my grandmother's living room and we'd just be dancing. We'd be practicing. We'd be twirling, he'd be catching me. Sometimes we'd be outside. And he was also involved in gymnastics. So from middle school, them actually seeing and recognizing that there's some latent talent there, he connected with an actual dance school in Miami, which he actually still goes back to mentor teach at now, called the Dance Empire of Miami. It's a very well known dance school now. But his mentor, Angel Logan, who's the owner of that dance company, she began to mentor him, and really instill in him what he needed in order to continue to go on. So he wound up going to New World School of the Arts, which is a very prestigious art school that you have to audition to get into for high school. And then from there, he joined the ALE2 company, and then he became a principal dancer. And now he has become, the company's first resident choreographer. So just that whole trajectory I'm looking at, even with her life, it's like, yeah. But there's a prophetic side to my brother's life that he doesn't really talk about. And that was one time, and I'm getting it on record in case anybody asks. That was one time where it was Robert, myself, and him. We had gone to this little church service in the hood, in a storefront in South Florida, in our community. And during the church service, the woman who was speaking called him up to the front, and she prophesied to him. And she said, "You are going to go all around the world and be a dancer." And she said, "Whatever you do, don't forget that it was God that put you there." And she laid hands on him, and the Spirit of God came upon him, and he began to dance beautifully in the Spirit. He almost looked like a dove that was dancing. It was very powerful. I will never forget that moment. And from that point forward, it was like you saw God just favoring him at every point in his dance trajectory and into his career. Now, I don't know if he's ever put that out there in any of his interviews, but as his sister and as someone who bore witness to the prophecy, I'm going to put it out there that it was God that anointed the talent that was already in him. And so God has made good on his promise to him. And, my prayer is that he is continuing to make good on his gift and his acknowledgement of God in all that he's doing. So.
Well, okay, there are two lessons here. Don't sleep on the hood. And don't sleep on small storefront ministries.
Exactly. Oh, and I have even more about don't sleep on the hood. Let me tell you some of the people that came out of my hood. You ready? You ready? Okay. One of the people who would often come down to my hood was Luke Skywalker. Well known in my hood.
Yeah, Uncle Luke.
Second person who would hang out in my hood, Deion Sanders. He was always rolling through my hood. Third person who came out of my hood, I'm not mentioning myself, Third person who came out of my hood, R&B soloist Trelawney Davis.
Okay.
She was on the Luke Skywalker's record. I think she was like his first R&B soloist artist. Fourth person who came, this is one little hood now. Fourth person who came out of my hood, you probably know this person if you like sports and MMA, Kimbo Slice.
Yeah.
I grew up.
I think everybody knows Kimbo Slice.
Yeah, I have a very personal relationship with Kimbo Slice that I will not be divulging on this broadcast. But I grew up with Kimbo Slice, and he taught me how to fight. So those are just some of the people that I know that came directly out of the hood.
Mm-hmm.
That people know.
All right.
All over the world. South Florida, 305.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Well, most of them that came out of my hood was sports people.
Was
mainly
what?
Football, like the Blades brothers. I say most of the people came out of my hood, and near my hood were sports, were good in sports, like the Blades brothers.
Gotcha.
All of them. Man, what's his name? Michael Irvin. To name a few, and oh man, I can't think. One guy with the elite football player was a running back. I can't think all the names now, but most of them were athletes.
Got it.
See, most of them were athletes. So, but yeah, there were a few well-known people that came, from either my hood or right near my hood. So that's probably why we don't get starstruck when we see stars. It's like, hey, dude, how you doing? What's up, girl? And keep on moving.
Right.
We don't, I had the opportunity to meet, when he was with a commission, Fred Hammond, at a radio station. We were at the group I was at the radio station. They were there for a concert. Had the opportunity to speak with him. He didn't blow my mind away. Number one, I love him because he's down to earth. He's a real down to earth person. And
if you're gonna hang out in the hood, you better be down to earth.
Yeah, you gotta be. You gotta be. Yeah, you better be. So I'm gonna tell you another person that was real down to earth, and people may not know this. That was Andre Crouch.
Oh, okay.
Because I actually went to his concert. Went to a concert years ago down at the Miami Highlight Fronton.
Hold on 1 second.
And we stopped back.
Lady Shantae, I see you. I'm going to bring you in. I just want you to know I see you, and I'm going to bring you in. Go ahead.
Okay. And we stopped by McDonald's, and guess who walks in?
Andre Crouch.
Andre Crouch. And he sat, and he talked, and he talked, and he talked. Real down-to-earth person. But real quick, I want to go to Muhammad Ali. Well, I got to mention Baldwin. He shook up the world. Ali shook up the world, but Baldwin shook up the world. Because he came with it, didn't bite his tongue, wasn't nice about it, offended people, and didn't care because he was speaking the truth.
Listen, on every platform, from television to Yale to whatever Ivy League school they invited him to come lecture at, he was just basically like, this is what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
And we need that level of boldness these days because some people are too scared to speak. And sometimes it's almost like you don't want certain sponsorships because it muzzles your mouth. In some ways it's almost like keep that money so I can say what I need to say because Whoopi Goldberg is experiencing that. Okay, she I'm sure she's making a nice good check because she's been there from the inception.
But I'm gonna tell you this.
So now we're gonna suspend you for 2 weeks.
What I like about her is she didn't back down. She didn't apologize.
But you know what? She shouldn't have had to because it's not like she was saying something that was untrue.
Right, and that was my point. What she was saying was 100% true.
I'm like,
offended the wrong people.
I'm like, just look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. Yeah. The numbers tell the story.
But this is the thing, though. She spoke the truth, and the crazy part about it, you got Americans all up in the uproar. But what did they do? They went to Negro land, got our ancestors, brought them here, enslaved them, murdered them, raped them, butchered them, and all that stuff. And they're still oppressing us. Oh, we don't want to deal with Kaepernick nailed because of it. And what did they do? They criminalized him.
Yeah.
See, we don't want to deal with the issues. Don't bring up the issues. See, because we have to penalize you because we don't want to change.
Okay.
See?
So I'm gonna bring in Christian, Pastor Ben. He's gonna just come right on the side of you.
Okay.
So Christian, get ready to come on in. All right. It should be adding him in just a moment. Let's see. I don't think I see any
It did spool for a
there we go.
Here we go.
Hello.
Christian. That's Christian. That's the great Christian.
How are you?
Good.
What would you like to share with us tonight, Christian?
I said I like the Muhammad Ali story.
All right.
That's where I was going next. Go ahead.
What?
So what did you like about it the most?
I like that when you was talking about how he was champion in the 8th round, and regain his name.
Yeah. That's an important thing, isn't it?
Yes.
That when someone tries to take your name from you, that you're able to come back and show that you are still the greatest, you are still integrous, you are still consistent, and that you are going to continue to speak the truth. And he wasn't like some people, right, who have a lot of talk, but then when they get in their sport, they're not really good at it. We know those kind of people, right? They do a lot of talking, but their stats don't measure up. But with Muhammad Ali, it wasn't like that. So no one could say that, oh, you're just talking to get people's attention off the fact that you're not a good boxer, right? He was a really good boxer.
Here's a question.
Go ahead.
I have so Mike Tyson or Muhammad Ali?
Oh gosh, Muhammad Ali.
Why?
Why? Because Muhammad Ali was more than a boxer.
Right.
So
listen, Muhammad Ali changed the sport.
Yeah.
Really, he changed the sport. There were a lot of boxers, but Muhammad Ali brought action to it. His style was so much different. This is why the song and the saying "float like a butterfly, sting like a bee" came from. Your hands can't hit what your eyes can't see. He was that quick.
Yeah.
He was that quick. He can get out of where you punch and punch you at the same time. He would shuffle his feet, dance, juke on you, dance on you a little bit, and boom, boom. And he would actually name the round that he would knock you out in.
Wow.
He would do that.
I think that there's some actual footage of him doing some practice that you might be able to find online. Christian, just if you want to take a look at his practice and his skills, I think that would be pretty good, pretty interesting for you to take a look at, to see how quickly he was moving. Well,
and he was fun to watch. He made it interesting.
I couldn't hear you.
I said, thank you. That is all the questions I have.
Okay. Thank you for joining us, Christian. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Well, I pretty much discussed the things that I was going to discuss about Muhammad Ali. Christian brought him out, but
good questions too.
He was right. He was an activist, and that's what many people. I mean, people spoke highly of him later on in his life, but they hated him then.
Yeah.
Let's be clear about that.
And he wasn't a perfect person. You know, I do want people to know that, you know, there's also a documentary that came out recently. I think it's on Netflix, about the relationship between Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X. And it talked about some of the mistakes he made in regards to his friendship with Malcolm X, and how later in life he actually stepped up to offer care to Malcolm X's daughters, you know, for pretty much his whole lifetime. Right. And so that was something that was brought out in that documentary as well. So when I think about human beings, I think about the overall spectrum of that person. So not just what they're good at, but what's their character like? Are they kind? Are they compassionate? Are they empathetic? Do they tell the truth? Do they have some kind of standard about their life? Do they stand for justice and mercy and caring for other people? So all of that to me encompasses a person, right? Because we have lots of people that are talented, but their character needs some work. Their character needs some work.
That brings me back. That brings us up to Coach Flo of the day. He turned down $100,000 per game.
I heard about that.
To promote the game. See, and because he's speaking on it now, people are ripping him apart. Okay,
yeah.
Wait a minute.
I know one of the assistant coaches on the Dolphins, and I'm wondering what they're thinking about that.
Listen, people are saying now that no coach would want to come here. But what did Ross do? Oh, he's difficult to work with. You know how many doors that one statement closed on him?
A lot.
Right. But they're not looking at that. He responded to what Ross did. If Ross had kept quiet, Flores probably wouldn't have even opened his mouth concerning what happened. But it's like, okay, you're accusing me of all this and you're throwing all this at me. Let me retell my side of the story. But hey, Flo was wrong. Why did he keep quiet? That questions his integrity. I said, why did he just walk away and quit? I said, there is a thing called a contract, a binding contract, where he couldn't just walk away. See, but some people's minds, calcification.
that good old pineal gland. It'll get you every time.
Okay. I just answered my own question.
Well, Pastor Ben, I want to thank you for tuning in. Thank those of you who are live. Thank you, Christian, for coming in. It's always good to see young people engaging this material. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host tonight, Shantae Charles. We will be back tomorrow with more Black History Read Alouds of famous icons, both gone and currently living. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness, so continue to go out and be what, Pastor Ben?
You know what? I got one more thought, then I'm going to say light.
Go ahead.
There was a chain of restaurants here in South Florida named Champ Burgers.
I remember them.
You remember them, right?
Okay,
that was basically named after and partly owned by Muhammad Ali.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yes, I figured I would throw that in there. It just came to mind. But anyway, light.
Yes. Light is the most daring opposition to darkness, so we encourage you to be light. Be light where you are. So many people, by the way, loved this shirt that I got from Target. This was designed by an HBCU student who's a current student. And this was one of the designs that was chosen to go nationwide for the Black History collection. So if anybody wants to know where they can pick this up, you can go to target.com and get your own shirt. So many people smiled today, and it brought some joy to some people. So I hope that you got some of my radiating joy on tonight. Take care, everybody. We'll see you back tomorrow, same time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. God bless. And good night.